Hello again, I'm Tripp Rogers, and this is Tripp's Take. Well, as I mentioned last week, I think number 65 birthday was Saturday. Hard to believe that I am 65 years old. Of course, when you get up to this point, you don't birthday celebrations. They kind of lose they pale in comparison. I graduated high school on my 18th birthday, was legally able to drink in New Jersey at the time. So I don't think you can top that birthday unless, and I've said this in the past, unless you get married or have a kid. So again, birthday celebrations. And yes, I know 65. I know it was a milestone. Yes, I know it's Medicare. But I also realized I am getting older. I mean, there's no doubt about it. When I get up in the morning, it takes me a little bit just to kind of gather my thoughts, get out of bed, whereas I used to be able to just jump out of bed. And of course, there are times that I have to jump out of bed, and you can probably relate if you have to jump out of bed and run to the bathroom. It's the only time I run out of bed. But be that as it may, I enjoyed the birthday, of course. What did I do to celebrate? Well, we had a Costco trip. Yay, Costco. As you get older, you appreciate those shopping trips and that kind of thing. But the fact it was on a Saturday too, I didn't have to work, could enjoy some downtime and actually enjoy the weekend, enjoy the downtime of the weekend, which is great. I want to talk about a story that is floating around the internet and people are expressing some shock about. As you may have heard, Bill Belichick, the former coach of the New England Patriots, is dating a 24-year-old. He's 71. And there are a lot of people who are talking about this in terms of, how can he date a 24-year-old, blah, 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 71 years old, the whole thing. Now, I will say from my experience, and this is me, I realized when I got into my 30s, I really had nothing in common with people in the early 20s. And as I grew older, I realized I didn't have a lot in common with people who were in their early 30s. So I never did that. But I am not going to sit there and point the finger and say, hey, you can't do that. Listen, makes them happy. That's great. The only problem with this is, and I think people have pointed this out, and there was a great movie, Las Vegas, and one of the subplots on this was the older Michael Douglas was married a very young woman, and there was an awkward moment when her father showed up at the engagement party that they threw, impromptu engagement party. And he was about the same age as, or I think a little younger than Michael Douglas's character. And that was kind of awkward. But the other part of this is, if the parents approve, the parents really have no say. It's between two people. And if they have something in common, that is great. And if they don't, well, you're going to find that out. And I think that was the problem. But there have been a lot of May-December romances, as they call them to a certain extent. And one of them, is still going strong. Howard Stern married a much younger woman for a second wife, and still married to Beth. And radio personality Don Imus married a very young, or much younger than him, wife who he had until he passed away. And I think they were married for a good 20 years or so. So this has gone on, and you see it in Hollywood sometimes. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of them going on. We just don't read about them. And people don't make a big deal about it. And I think, I think you give them their space, let them do their thing. But, do you think it's going to land? I don't know. You never know. I mean, listen, some weirder things have happened. I just think it's very funny how people react in a situation. They will react one way. And one of the things that's come up, the members of the Patriots have said, Bill Belichick said, you don't do this. And he goes and breaks one of his rules. Do as I say, not as I do. But again, he's not coaching anymore. It could be a life crisis. I don't want to say midlife crisis, but a life crisis, because Belichick is not employed. I mean, he's going to do some commentary this year for the Manning cast, but he's not coaching football. It's not that all encompassing job that he has had, and he's got some space. So, like I said, more power to him. I just kind of wonder, what are they going to have to talk about at the end of the day? And it's kind of funny, we will go into one of the big romances that everybody's following is Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. And I thought it was interesting that at the London shows recently, of course, Travis made an appearance on stage. The Kelce family was there. Jason was there. And Paul McCartney was there. Sir Paul visited a concert and attended a concert. And that's the thing that kind of really, shows me what's going on, because he is still tuned into the music business. Now, I don't think he's a full-fledged Swiftie and listens to Taylor Swift all the time, but the fact he did attend the show in London shows me that Sir Paul knows what's going on in music, and also can appreciate people who are in that glass house that you are when you are a pop star. And nowadays, it's even worse with the internet. I mean, I kind of wonder, you can't ask this question, but I kind of wonder, if the Beatles had all the social media and all this, would they, A, have lasted as long as they did? And B, would they be as popular as they were? Again, it's a sign of the times. Last but not least, I do want to mention, and I think I mentioned it last week, maybe I didn't, but there's a great documentary that the BBC has produced on disco, and it talks about the history of disco. And it is on PBS stations right now. It's a 3-part documentary. And Sandy and I have watched the first 2 parts, and I got to tell you, it's really interesting. Now, there's some of the stuff I forgot about in the disco era, but they talk about a lot of the people and the personalities, and they have interviews with folks, and I think it's really interesting. And it's not your stock kind of documentary. It really delves into the backstory of disco. And if you're a fan of the genre of music, or you grew up in the 70s, it is really a fascinating look back at a time of our life when the music scene was changing radically. And it's really fascinating. I mean, I'm finding it interesting. Most PBS stations have aired the first 2 parts. Part 3 be coming up next week. I'm sure you can catch it streaming, or you can catch it. They will rerun it at some point. And if you set your DVR for it, you can probably get all 3 parts. Really good documentary. Again, it's called Disco, and it's disco and the evolution of disco, or the evolution of dance, I think. Something to that effect. And that is Tripp's Take for June the 27th. Boy, time's just flying by, 2024. I'd love to hear your comments and questions about my podcast. Please feel free to email trippstake@gmail.com. If you love the music of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you can listen to WTRSradio.com. It's online 24/7. Great radio station, if I do say so, but then it's mine, so I hope I think it's great. Join us again next week for another edition of Tripp's Take. For now, I'm Tripp Rogers. Thanks for joining me. Make it a great one.